Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am Jessica Del Mar. This is the Oneness podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking all about December Ascension Energy. What came through for December has a lot to do with opening up the heart, true self-integration, and even some information about Christ consciousness, or how the awakening of Christ consciousness is occurring at this time. So the very first thing that came through when I tapped into the December Ascension Energy were the words open heart. So December energy has a lot to do with opening up the heart in ways that allow for more major breakthroughs and deeper integration of who we truly are, and really kind of grasping what that means for us in the direction of our life moving forward. Who we truly are. What does that really mean? We say it a lot in terms of who we truly are, tapping into who we truly are, embodying who we truly are. But what does that really mean? We're going to talk more about it in this episode. Tapping more into who we truly are has a lot to do with opening up our heart. So in order to reveal more of who we truly are, we have to learn to open up our heart more and more. An open heart is essentially what invites in your co-creation with God, with Source, with the universe. It tells the universe that you're not doing this alone because you never really are. But our willingness to allow our greater self to come in and help move us through life is what an open heart is all about. And through that openness, it naturally also lets other people in too. Many times when we have issues or problems, we don't let other people or the world know. We keep challenging situations and feelings to ourselves, often stuffed in the closed parts of our hearts. Sharing these things makes us very vulnerable, and a lot of people are scared of that. But opening up your heart means not only letting the universe, God, Source in to help you through it, but also letting your world into your heart to help heal or carry the burden. We are connected to everything in our reality, and so opening up our hearts means opening ourselves to people who are closest to us, to our environment, to the earth, to animals, etc., into our hearts to help distribute that energy so it's not concentrated in our closed hearts, which ultimately makes it so that we are not the only ones to bear the burden of our energy. Because again, you are never alone. We're never alone. Opening up our hearts means that we're willing to accept assistance in how we live our lives. People with closed hearts often have control issues, meaning they want to control every aspect of their lives and make it so that their sacrifices, responsibilities, and achievements are all on their own accord. There's nothing wrong with this, but when the breakdown eventually happens, and it usually always does, and it becomes all too much for us to bear, then a realization that we were never meant to carry it all on our own becomes understood. We were not necessarily meant to give our burdens to other people, but we were meant to share our burdens with God. This is because it initiates a sense of co-creation with a greater power that is beyond our self-awareness. This means that you trust in something greater than yourself, and you trust in a flow of energy that goes beyond yourself. We are never given more than what we can handle, but what we can handle is directly proportional to what God can achieve, meaning we can expand more than we think we can. Therefore, we can handle more than we think we can, but it was never meant to be only for us to handle. Giving it to a greater power means that I will do what I can for me to move through this, and you, greater power, God, the universe, Source, you will do what you can for me to move through this too. So it begins with vulnerability and openness, a willingness to let go of control and holding on so tightly, thinking that everything that is yours is only yours to handle. God is always showing up for us. We just have to be open enough to let it in and witness all of the ways that God works for us. So again, this means being vulnerable. It means sharing your heart. It means sharing your feelings. It means exposing yourself to the world, not in the way where you're shouting your problems from the rooftop or trying to burden your problems onto other people, but in a way where you carry it with you during that season of your life, instead of stuffing it away. Meaning, if you're going through a hard time, don't fake like you're not. Be open and authentic with your reality in terms of acknowledging where you are energetically and emotionally. Be open and authentic with wherever you are in your season of life. Because when you do this, when you open up your heart, not only do you take steps in your life to nurture exactly where you are and what you're going through and what you're feeling, but your reality, everything around you, also works to support you more than you realize that it does. Your reality will come together to help nurture, support, and carry you and your energy. But you have to be open enough to let that energy emerge from your heart and into your state of being, because your reality around you translates your state of being, right? It reflects your vibrational state of being. If you keep your problems stuffed in a closed heart, then your reality will feel the confusion between what you think and feel. It will feel the confusion in your energy field and your vibration, and will offer you, again, things that support that confusion, because it's always supporting you, meaning it will give you more things to get frustrated about. It will give you more things to be confused about. It will give you more challenging situations piled on top of each other. So it's responding to the confusion or the mismatch of energy in your field and in your vibration. And this is often what happens when we stuff things away or we try to suppress things. Opening up your heart is about embodying exactly how you feel, being true to your experience, and allowing your reality to support you in moving through that feeling and experience. This is how both you and your entire reality shift and move together in a certain direction, in a dedicated direction, instead of parts of you being left behind because you weren't present enough with yourself to move through it when it was happening. And this is what often creates a disconnect between our inner and our outer realities, because parts of us, our inner self, gets left behind as our outer reality works to keep moving us forward. Another theme with this month of December through the open heart is continued major breakthroughs. So major breakthroughs through an open heart. And open hearts essentially are the catalyst to the integration or awakening of our internal Christ consciousness energy or awareness, which we'll talk more about in just a little bit. The vision that I was receiving was a dam breaking and this roaring river water kind of rushing and coming through. Breakthroughs regarding things that you've been struggling with or finding challenges with, especially if they are long-term challenges or things that you've been suffering with for a very long time, will be made available if you're able to understand what caused the cauterization, is the word that came through, a powerful word, cauterization of the dam in the first place. So why was your energy being blocked off? Why was your energy being held back? What false beliefs about yourself and others are in place to keep your energy contained the way that it is? What are you holding too tightly to or trying to control that is actually out of your control? The cauterization essentially occurred to block off an open wound, a very gushing open wound. If that wound was left open, then it would have leaked into so many different aspects of your life. And so a blockage occurred in order to prevent that wound from spreading. In other words, that's a form of control. Us cauterizing a wound before fully processing it, blocking that part off, is kind of an internal self-control, trying to control or block off parts of ourselves because we don't want it seeping or flooding out and affecting all the other parts of ourselves. But what happened is that this cauterization itself created this sort of moat or protective barrier around certain areas of the heart, keeping those certain areas closed or blocked off. This in turn keeps many things separate in what you perceive to be for you or against you. So it kind of showed me that in the cauterization or the blocking off of a lot of our internal wounds, it created this internal separation specifically in how we perceive things to be for us or against us. And so a lot of that cauterization or the blocking off of those wounds is self-protection, right? So of course it's going to then feed into ways that we feel protected, or ways that we feel safe, or ways that we feel things are either for us or against us. And in the cauterization or in the protection, the protective barrier, the blockage, the blocking off, it created sort of a skewed perception of those things, of what we feel is for us or against us. And so there's going to be a lot of reevaluating things that we thought were for us or against us, and maybe shifting the perspective of things that we thought was either for us or against us, and having that become more avenues of clarity for us. Because if we have illusionary or skewed perceptions of things that are for us or against us, then it actually really inhibits, or it really affects the way that we move forward in life. And so by reevaluating those specific things, it kind of opens up the directions in how we move forward in life. It creates more of an openness. It creates less boundaries for us in terms of moving forward. But in order to kind of be in that space of reevaluation, we also have to reevaluate our wounds and why we blocked those parts off of ourselves, why we cauterized those wounds, why we blocked ourselves off from those wounds, why we were self-protecting in that way to begin with. So with this dam breaking, that vision that I had, and this breakthrough occurring, an inner revealing is taking place. And what it reveals is this: that many of the reasons that you experience anything less than who you truly are is because you are not yet fully activated in all the ways that you are your true self. Again, this is what is being revealed, that many of the reasons you experience anything less than who you truly are is because you are not yet fully activated in all the ways that you are your true self. Your true self is always within you. Recognizing it means that you also recognize that who you truly are is also who you have held yourself back from becoming. You are never behind, but the recognition that you have only just scratched the surface of who you truly are in the lifetime that you have lived so far means that there is so much more for you out there to discover and become. This is the era of the true self, and there is no way to hold something back from becoming all that it was meant to become in this lifetime. It is a time of unleashing that which was once pressed away, and like a fire raging in an open landscape, it cannot be contained, because it has already been contained, never to return to that place. In its confinement, it waits for the right time to turn over and free itself. That time is coming near. Prepare yourself to receive more of who you are. However, how you receive more of who you truly are depends upon the strength of the ego. A strong ego will do all that it can to hold the gates closed for as long as it can. This means extra masking, overprotection of self-identity, stronger holds on attachments, and amplifying psyche distress. Questions such as, who am I, becomes less of a spiritual or philosophical journey and more of a self-sabotage. So you see this in people who, for example, make fun of the spiritual journey or try to diminish self-development in others, or who try to approach the spiritual journey from a very egoic place. But through inner work, as the ego sits more on the side to allow the higher self to become the lead co-creator, in other words, you shift from the mind into the heart, the ability to integrate more aspects of you, especially aspects that have been lost or unknown for so long, becomes more of a seamless experience rather than a daunting one. Our ability to integrate more of ourselves can be a very scary thing for people who do not feel supported by a higher self. The ego will try to protect us from this greater integration because it questions and also challenges all that we think we know. The journey completely breaks down everything supported by ego, including self-identity and what we believe that we are capable of. It essentially crafts us into a completely new person, but from the ego perspective, this means death to versions of us that it worked so hard to achieve and accomplish. In reality, integrating a completely new version of ourselves should be as seamless as moving from one season to another. The process of shedding an old sense of self, or an old season, should be as effortless as transitioning into a new seasonal wardrobe. But effortless is not necessarily the right word as much as it should technically just be part of who we are. Who we are is that we are adaptable and we are made for change, but we also know that every season we have changed out of never truly leaves us, but that we are also so malleable enough to continue to make room for more. We don't necessarily hold on to old versions of ourselves, but we allow ourselves the chance and opportunity to keep growing and evolving. We know that with each new season comes new experiences and new ways to shape and explore more of who we are. Somewhere in between, we lost this sense of ourselves, the ability to shift so easily, so much so that many people's minds got stuck in time, frozen in outdated perceptions of the self, encapsulated in what feels the safest and most comfortable, never straying too far. But there's a big wave coming that will change the coastline of every shore, and we must understand that to ride that wave means that we survive that tremendous change. And for those who are unable to get out of the frozen state that they have created for themselves, they will feel that wave beating upon their rocky shores. But for those who are able to open up their hearts, invite more of who they truly are in, and be soft enough to embrace change, they will allow that big wave to change their edges so that they may move along with the changing landscape and not be wary. Open your hearts and allow yourselves to move with that wave. So many people are experiencing pain, challenges, and feeling completely backed into a corner. And it's not that your life is caving in on you, although we know that it feels that way. But rather, what is happening is all of your self-identities are being challenged all at the same time. And this can be extremely stressful for the ego and psyche if you do not know how to adapt to change and let go of control. All of who you think you are is being squeezed out of you for you to see straight into. Why do you feel the lack? Why do you feel the squeeze? Why do you feel the overwhelm? Why do you feel like there's no way out? Why do you feel like you're being crushed? Why does it feel like there are no options? The reason is because there are beliefs deep within you that says that there is no way through. The reason is because there is an identification with the lack. The reason is because there is self-perception that you are supposed to be living this way. But we want to tell you, rather remind you, that there is always a way through, always abundance, and always a more desirable experience to be had. With that being said, there are a lot of martyr self-perceptions, beliefs, and programs that are crumbling right now. But they crumble through your ability to see it and experience it. You must feel it viscerally to be completely aware that you hold it. It must be an aha moment where you recognize that you sometimes hold the need to suffer because you feel that you are supposed to. This is really powerful. Again, another thing coming through is this sort of martyr self-perception, belief, and program that a lot of people carry within themselves, and those are crumbling right now. Essentially, you have to be able to viscerally feel that within yourself, and so you are experiencing it in really major ways. And that's also where your big breakthroughs are going to come through. And so when you have those aha moments where you recognize it, you are recognizing that you sometimes hold the need to suffer because you feel that you are supposed to. Where that comes from is a lot of reasons why you cauterized a large wound in the first place, going back to the beginning, and the wounds that we have in our heart that we cauterized or blocked ourselves off from, which essentially then closed up our hearts. It imprinted a martyr stamp of frequency that says, I would rather suffer for or with others and the world than suffer by reigniting this inner wound. That's huge. I would rather suffer for or with others and the world than suffer by reigniting this inner wound. How powerful is that? To redirect our suffering into the world every chance that we get, instead of looking closely at our own internal wounds. The martyr program is slowly phasing out the more people see and believe in themselves. This dramatically shifts disempowerment into empowerment and self-doubt into self-belief. This also has a lot to do with the integration or awakening of Christ consciousness in our hearts. Because again, open hearts is what allows that Christ consciousness to come through. And so we have to be able to open up our hearts in order to get into that next phase of our awakening, which is the integration of Christ consciousness from within us. Christ consciousness is our next state of being. Despite a lot of belief, the one that we call Christ did not suffer for the sins of others. Humans perceive this as a martyr sacrifice, the death of Christ to be a martyr sacrifice. But really what came through is that Christ suffered to show that a strong belief in the self is what is persecuted by others, and that to deny thyself is to be accepted in the hands of a sinful world. But to believe in thyself fully and completely would not be accepted by a world of sin. To sin is not a wrongdoing, but simply an act against the self, a denial of the self, and a lack of belief in the self. This often leads people into actions and behaviors that completely disregard the true self, which is essentially energy alignment with God or with Source. That's the true self. And that's also why people then perceive that the wrongdoings or the actions and behaviors are the sin, but the sin is actually the act against the self. It's the denial of the self. It's not actually necessarily the behaviors or the actions. Those are just the outcomes of the denial of self or a lack of belief in the self. Similarly, to be free of sin is not a right doing, but simply acts for the self, rooted in self-love, self-service, and a belief in the self. It means that you are thinking, behaving, and being in alignment with your true self and serving the true self, which is essentially, again, energy alignment with God, Source, the universe. This is not to be confused with serving false versions of the self from an ego perspective. The initiation of Christ was an initiation of self-belief, and that within you, all things are possible. And as you embrace the fullness of who you truly are, you are capable of magnificent things, not only for yourself, but for others too. Your inner light is as valuable to the world as it is to the source that you birthed from. Christ showed the world what a bright light could do to change the world, what absolute miracles could take place, and what immense joy and love could feel like. The world by that time was losing its light, and the attempt to remind them was forsaken. but all of the world is always given the chance to remember, and it is now that we awaken the Christ within. And what came through was, a lot of people know it as Yahweh, but what I was hearing is more of this like breathy Yahweh, Yahweh kind of thing, but essentially connecting back to Yahweh. And that's what came through for this episode, this December Ascension Energy. A lot of powerful things coming through, a lot of integration and energy activation. So definitely sit with that and how it comes through for you and how it applies to your own journey and your own explorations of the self coming through for you. Thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to read the written transmission of this episode and of all my podcast episodes, head on over to my newsletter website. I'll post the link to that newsletter. I've also got open one-on-one sessions for those of you who feel called to have a session with me and we can deep dive into whatever is on your mind, whatever you're experiencing. I'd love to work with you. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for all of your support, and I'll see you in the next episode. Oneness, love, and peace be with you.